Hey, it's your buddy Mike Messier. I'm just leaving EPCOT Center August 2021. I might have a play-by-play man in here in a moment. We'll see. But yeah, my friend.
Hey everyone.
Morrow is up in Boston, but he's a EPCOT and a Disney connoisseur, and I wanted you here for the play-by-play. It might be very loud because they're piping in all this loud, wonderful music, Morrow. But I know that you're a connoisseur of these parks, and you're actually the person that got me hooked on these places with your insistence that we go right before the worldwide situation.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy actually. I remember specifically being there with you at the Walt Disney World parks almost a week before they started shutting everything down, and I literally got on one of the last planes to get back to Massachusetts where I live. So yeah, and then before you know it, everything was shut down. I mean, it was sort of in the air already, like no pun intended, but so I remember just being very careful about like what I touched because I wasn't sure, what it was going to be like. So, but since we did that trip together, you've now been on like way more times to Disney in the last year and a half than I have been my entire life. So that's pretty impressive.
Kamari says hi to us. Mike's Disney list. We're going to try to get some more sites for everybody.
Yeah. So Mike's at EPCOT. We were just talking about EPCOT, and he is at the Food Pavilion. And I remember my experience in some of those places, like the German Food Pavilion. I thought was very nice. I used to live in Germany, and I ate some of the food, and I compared it, and I actually thought it was it's pretty authentic. So, so they definitely, keep an eye on quality there. And all the employees at the international pavilions at EPCOT are basically exchange workers from that country that pavilion is at. So it's some kind of like post-school but before work kind of exchange thing, like if you want to have that experience. And I remember getting asked questions a few times by the German guys who worked at the German restaurant. They were asking me, how do I get into this country? How can I like live here? How can I actually start making a living once this is over? And it kind of felt bad that I had to break their hearts and basically tell them you can't. You either have to marry an American, or you have to get in a long, long line, or you have to become like a registered nurse or something. Mike, you still with me?
I want to thank my buddy Mauro Canepa, who's an actor himself. We worked together on the Wrestling with Sanity short film trilogy. Mauro's been handling the play-by-play here because it's very loud. So Mauro, I'm going to let you discuss why you like the Disney parks so much, and I'm going to mute myself for the benefit of the audience.
Okay. Well, you're kind of putting me on the spot here, but why do I like the Disney parks? Well, I mean, I've been a Disney nut since I was a kid, basically. So I grew up with the movies, like most, people my generation did. It didn't matter if the movies were sort of, too cutesy or too maybe on the girly side with all that princess stuff, or whatever, too much for kids. I didn't care. I just watched them all. They were basically cartoons, like long cartoons that you can watch, and they're usually almost always entertaining and they're memorable. And if you were like a young teen in the 90s, there was no better time to be a fan of either the films or the franchise.
Okay, it's back to Mike here. Mauro, I don't know if Mauro's with me or not. Hey, buddy.
Yeah, I'm with you. I've been
good job with the play-by-play. This is very experimental technologies that we're incorporating here. It's quite the wonder in our lifetime, buddy. Did you ever think that we could do a broadcast where you're in Boston and I'm in Orlando, Florida, and we're broadcasting in live time for a small amount of money? Did you ever think that would be possible 15 or 20 years ago?
Well, no, but it's one thing in a long list of things that I never thought would be technically possible, like ever. So, but here we are, you know, and as long as they allow it and don't take our phones away, I think we'll be good. It's not like we're giving away any trade secrets, so.
Now, what I'm going to do, more for the benefit of everyone, is I'm going to walk by some of the sites. This is on exit, so I'm leaving, but I want you to kind of commentate what you know. I think I'm coming up on that American Hall exhibit, the American Hall exhibit.
Yeah. Okay. It's a little dark where you are, but I'm going to try my best to make it out. So I guess the American Hall considered, it's sort of like the centerpiece of the EPCOT Pavilion. You know, for those who are not familiar, the EPCOT International Pavilion is like a string of small areas that represent like a country from around the world. You got England, Germany, Italy, Mexico, China, Japan, I believe, if I remember correctly. And in the center is the American one. It's the biggest one there. I think that's by design. And each one of those has a food area where you can buy food, and some of them even have rides. The American one, I don't remember that much because I didn't really spend a lot of time there. It was kind of redundant to be sort of in America and visit the America-themed pavilion and restaurant. So, you know, I was more excited about seeing the other countries, if I'm being honest. So another thing that these pavilions do nonstop is they try to sell you merch. So if you haven't gotten your merch yet, that's where you go. So they one thing I remember especially about the Disney parks is they don't waste any chance to try to sell you something at every corner.
Well, Maura's doing an excellent job with the play-by-play. I really appreciate it. This is spontaneous, like I was saying. Who would have thunk 15 years ago, when Maura and I became buddies, that we'd be able to do this live streaming podcast? I know for kids today, they might take it for granted, but for me, being in the world of entertainment, when it's hard to get a crowd for anything, it's so much fun to have this technology. Keep talking, Maura. I think you were saying your love for the Disney parks. I was talking to someone today about Roy Disney, who's kind of underappreciated, the brother of Walt Disney. What do you know about the history of Disney World? Walt Disney, his brother, other people?
Yeah, I'm just looking at one of the comments. I like the sodas, the soda cans, I think, of the world in that Coca-Cola booth thing at Epcot. Yeah, I think I remember that. Speaking of Coca-Cola and the beverage cans, if you go to Hollywood Studio and go to Star Wars Land, which, you know, if you're a Disney or Star Wars fan, I'm sure that's probably the first place you'll go to. You know, before you're done taking it all in, check out the beverage shops there. You can actually buy soda in the bottles shaped like a thermal detonator from Return of the Jedi. Those of you who have ever seen Star Wars or Return of the Jedi will know what I'm talking about. It's basically a round bomb-shaped thing, you know, and it's got like alien writing on it, which I thought was great. So, you know, Coca-Cola actually licensed those. They're a great souvenir, and they're probably the cheapest souvenir that you'll buy. You know, I got one, I drank my soda, I drank my Coke, and then I put the empty container in my luggage and went home. But I wish I could show it to you right now. It's actually in my office, but maybe next time I'll show it. So I thought that was a cool little touch. As far as to answer your question, I don't know much about Disney's relationship with Roy. I believe there's a Roy Sr. and a Roy Jr. who would be his nephew. I know more about Roy Jr., who would eventually take over pieces of the Disney company until the 90s. And then the history gets a little bit dark with other people coming in, you know, names like, I
Michael
think...
Eisner's a name we hear a lot, Michael Eisner.
Yes, Michael Eisner came in. He and another guy and Roy Disney basically fought over control of the company. The third guy, I forget his name, ended up dying in the helicopter crash, actually, which, you know, tragic. And Roy Disney and Michael Eisner never really got along, you know. And then while it was arguably like creatively and financially like a high point for the company in the mid-90s, behind the scenes there was a major like power struggle going on with guys like Jeffrey Katzenberg wanting more control, Michael Eisner being sort of wanting to be a big shot, and Roy Disney trying to preserve, you know, the Disney name, as rightfully so. You know, how that all panned out in the end, I'm not so sure. You know, I know Jeffrey Katzenberg left and created DreamWorks, so it's thanks to him that we would have movies like Shrek and Kung Fu Panda. But, you know, but that's just, you know, even at the time, I felt like the Disney company once was unrecognizable to where it was 20 years before then. And now, 20 years since the 90s ended, again, in a totally different place, you know? So it's ever changing, you know? And I believe there was a quote from Walt Disney that I heard him say the other day. You know, the fact that nothing in the park especially should ever be set in stone. Everything should always be evolving. Everything should always be, you know, changing. And, you know, because that's what creativity is. It cannot be frozen in place, I think is basically what he was trying to say. So he fully anticipated that even after his death, the parks would always be, you know, adding, changing, upgrading, becoming new stuff would always be added, you know. Like some things are obviously off limits, but but you can tell just how much has changed in the parks if you go there now. I mean, last time I was there was 2 years ago, and already they added a crap ton of stuff that wasn't even there when I was there. So
You had a good commentary when we came here together that you said that Disney Hollywood Studio is kind of like where they put all the new stuff.
yeah.
Magic Kingdom is off limits because everyone wants it to be the same, so that's more or less locked.
Yep.
And how did the Animal Kingdom and the EPCOT, where I am now, fit into that equation, or expand more upon that theory you had?
Yeah, you know, you're right about that. And I always thought Animal Kingdom was kind of, at the time we didn't know it, but it was always like a little uncomfortable to begin with, kind of creating a sort of a life-size replica of African, you know, poverty life, for lack of a better term, which was sort of like the richest company in the world kind of giving a big fuck you to like developing third world nations, as it were. You know, it was for the people who thought they would never go to Africa, and this was like the next best thing. And I get the idea behind it, but just walking around Animal Kingdom, you know, once you get, you know, you kind of feel that a little bit, but then you kind of also get caught up a little bit in the romanticism of it. You know, you do feel like you're there, and there are animals there, which are great. And so, and I think the Animal Kingdom also sort of is very much a driver of environmentalism. I think they make that very clear. It was a big deal in the 90s. Is a big deal again now, driving you know, things like saving the world, you know, saving the animals, especially conservation efforts. You know, those, I think they're pretty good at getting those across. So I can't fault them too much for what Animal Kingdom is and what they're trying to do, like artistically. So it's cool with me. As far as how they've changed, well, they built basically what is essentially Avatar land. So if you're a fan of Avatar, the movie, not the TV show, the movie, they've basically recreated the planet of Pandora, and it's completely worth checking out. So, especially at night when everything lights up. As far as like, yeah, that's the biggest expansion I think they've ever done. Other than that, they've done very little. They try to always tie in every single park with like whatever the current movie franchise is. Like when Animal Kingdom first was created, Lion King was like the biggest sort of brand tie-in that they could think of, and they continue doing that to this very day with all other new properties like Avatar and like anything coming out of Pixar, etc. But it's pretty experimental for the most part. Epcot, on the other hand, I always think Epcot probably is the one park where you can do the most experimenting, updating, changing, because the whole park is basically dedicated to just that. It's dedicated to futurism. So it's supposed to be the park that represents the latest and best and greatest of technology. And I think the technology behind the attractions is supposed to reflect that, and does to an extent. I haven't been there in about 10 years, but I'm pretty sure that that's the one park that they've basically messed around with the most. So
I could be wrong, but I think they're putting up some type of, it looks like a roller coaster on a boat, to be honest with you. I'm not sure what's going on, but it looks like there's some type of boat that actually has a ride on the boat.
Yeah.
And I don't know how better to explain it, but it's here. I don't think it's ready to go yet, but it looks like it's under construction.
Yeah, I wouldn't put it past them. That's probably something they would do. I miss Epcot. I really do. For me, it was always the park that was like the most comfortable, because it's really the only park that has any kind of lawn, grass that you can actually sit in and lie in. All the other parks are kind of mostly concrete and metal. Epcot actually has, some greenery, has trees, and it always feels like it's the cleanest one. Maybe it's just because like everything around you feels so sleek and new, and and it's got the least amount of kids, I think. And
you said that Epcot is known as where the parents take their kids to punish them.
I think you said that, but it's probably not from the truth. From the truth, there was a great gag on The Simpsons where Homer was kind of anticipating going to Disney World, and he was like, "Where are we going? Is it Animal Kingdom? Is it Magic Kingdom? Is it Disney Hollywood?" And then it hits him, and he's like, "Oh no, we're going to the worst one of all. It's Epcot. Oh, even flying over it is boring." And the stigma was certainly true at the time. It was supposed to be the educational park, where kids can learn and play. But that was then, and Walt Disney's original idea was to actually have it to be a live-in city, like where people can actually live and work, and it would be like the biggest advancement in terms of urban planning at the time. This was probably the 1970s. Unfortunately, he never lived to see it completed, but they built a theme park around his very idea about the future of urban planning, and that's what Epcot is today. And I'm not going to lie to you, when I first visited it in 1998, I was pretty bored by it. Everything really felt like, you were being taught all the time. It really did feel like being in a world. It kind of felt like being in a museum almost, where you can ride some of the rides, A couple of years later, late 2000s, is when they started introducing some of the new branding that they had just recently bought up, like especially Pixar. And so basically their water attraction, their aquatics attraction was themed with Finding Nemo, and things like that. And that gave it a lot more of an identity. And I think it got the kids a lot more excited too. So you probably see more kids now than you did back then. And it's probably got more attendance too. There's a lot of rides that I think people like there. Like Test Drive, I know, is a popular one, where you get to basically ride in a race car that goes really, really fast. Like, you don't ride it; it's on a track. There's an attraction called Soarin', where you basically suspend it in air, and you got a projector in front of you, and it looks like you're flying. So that's fun. And it's a little short on coasters, though. I don't remember a single actual thrill ride, as it were, at Epcot, which I think
the only one is the Test Drive. And that's very short.
Yeah, So it is a thrill ride, sure, but it's not something you would consider like a classic roller coaster, you know. So it's definitely lacking that. You know, like I said, I think that's by design. You know, they wanted to be the park of the future, you know, and of course, you know, that's only half of the park. The other half, of course, is the International Pavilion, which I already talked about, and you know, to bring, you know, the world a little bit closer to you. So yeah, I enjoyed it, you know, but it's the one park where I always got the feeling like I'll probably spend the least amount of time here. I don't know why, but I just feel that way, you know, because it feels like for me, it had like the least amount of interesting stuff in it, and I always kind of felt like the lines were a lot shorter. It definitely always seemed like the least crowded one.
Well, today, Morrow, and for anyone that's watching, it was August, I believe, 16th, 2021. I only got here at like 3:45 p.m. is when I got into the park, EPCOT, and that Globe ride, the Future ride, was an immediate get on, no wait, 5 minutes, which means no wait.
Yeah.
Nemo's same thing, no wait. Our buddy Figment the Imagination was no wait. The only wait that I had was the last thing I did today was about a half-hour wait for the Frozen.
Yeah, not surprising. You know, it's one of the biggest, most recognizable things and most popular things that they probably have there. For those who don't know, the Frozen ride is actually at the Norway Pavilion, which again, you know, ties into the park's, you know, sort of idea of tying in their existing movies and franchises into, you know, what is already existing. So it totally makes sense to make a Frozen ride in the Norway land pavilion, if you will, you know, since the movie does take place in Norway or some nondescript Scandinavian nation. I think they're even planning about building a Ratatouille ride at the French pavilion, which I believe is already being built and is almost ready to go. They started it in Disneyland Paris, and now they're bringing it over here.
That might be the thing on water that I saw today.
Yeah, it could. Doesn't necessarily check out that it would be on water, unless it's like a boat ride, which I'm not saying it couldn't be, but I think it's actually, if I remember the footage from it, I think it's more of a dark ride. So it would be like one of those 3D dark rides, which sort of you're on a trackless car, but you get like things projected at you all the time. And so what you saw might be even something else, you know, something big.
There was something on, like, it's hard to explain, but it's like a barge on the water, and it looks like a roller coaster or a catapult ride being built on the barge.
When you say on the water, you're talking about the big lake in the middle of the park?
Yeah.
Yeah. So apparently they had, they used to have this show called, I believe, Illuminations, which was the big end of the day fireworks display at Epcot, but it was also mixed with other stuff, not just fireworks, but also like projections and lighting effects and fire effects and water effects and projection on water, you know, fountains kind of effects. I remember seeing it once, but it was a long time ago. Apparently they discontinued that about a year or two ago, and what you're seeing now might be what will eventually replace it. So it looks to me like they're actually trying to build an attraction there, like an actual ride. So for sure. What that is?
I missed the end of the day fireworks because I was in the line for Frozen. When
Right.
I got out, there was one batch of fireworks that I caught, and then that was it.
Yeah. That happened to me on a number of times, you know. But when it comes time to choose, like, what do? You're so close. You've been in line for half an hour or an hour. What's another couple of minutes? And of course, you know, in the end of the day, you just gotta weigh it. You know, can I get on this ride and skip the fireworks, or do I have to go and see the fireworks? You know, they're just fireworks. So you did the right thing.
A lot of times I like to get out of here in time to go see a movie, and if I would still be able to see a movie. There's a movie playing as late as 10:50 p.m. tonight here in Orlando, but I'm exhausted. I'm too tired to go see a movie tonight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hear you, and it can get exhausting. you know. Usually at the end of the day, my feet are killing me. And even the prospect of going to a movie theater and sitting down, it just seems like too much for me because my feet are killing me, my back's killing me, I'm too tired. So I usually don't end up doing anything anymore, especially when you're there on a multi-park trip. You want to save some of your, walking energy for the rest of the parks. So
Tell the good people, if you don't mind, if it doesn't embarrass you, about your shoe wear faux pas last time we were here in one of the parks. Tell them about even though
yeah,
your buddy tried to warn you, you faux pas.
I sure did. Faux pas. So that was the day I went to Disney Hollywood Studios, and I had one goal in mind at the beginning of the day: to get there early enough to put myself on the wait list for Star Wars Rise of the Resistance. It was a ride that's the only one currently at the park that is waitlisted, where you have to show up early to book your spot, otherwise you lose it. So I got lucky enough to actually be put on the waiting list, on the boarding list, as it were, and I was able to go on the ride at 11 a.m. So at that point, it was like, mission accomplished for me, for the most part. But I don't know how long I was going to be at the park. So in the morning, I threw on these sort of like dress shoes, which were the only ones I brought because they looked nice, but they had like no sole. Like they had no cushioning in the sole. So they were like really hard. They're meant for going out. They're not meant for like hiking or walking or anything. And not knowing how long I was going to be at that park, I figured, it's not a problem. But then I ended up staying. I really wanted to catch the end of the day big show that they have in one of their big sort of like water amphitheater arenas thing. It's a show that's been around for 20 years, and I never got to catch it. But that was going to be at like 8 o'clock or something. So rather than just sit around, I found myself just walking the entire park back and forth, over and over again, just trying to just kill time, really, and maybe see something or be on something that I haven't seen yet. That ended up being a mistake. And by the end of the night, like having been basically at the park from 8 to 8, so that's like 12 hours, mostly walking, my feet were basically unusable. Like they were killing me so hard. And then I was about to exit the park. On top of that, they had fireworks. I'm sorry, no, not fireworks. It was like a big laser light show in the middle of Disney Hollywood. First, it was Disney themed, and then I was like, oh, great. So that's the end of it. It's 9:30 by now, and I really want to go home because Mike's waiting for me. But then they had another laser light show, and this time it was Star Wars themed. And I was like, God damn it, now I got to watch this too. At that point, I could barely stand. So I literally sat on the ground. Like, I didn't care who saw it, but I just had to like basically sit in the dirt, on the concrete.
Now this could have all been avoided, this pain, this discomfort, this aggravation, these calluses, because the night that we got there, I believe we went to a Walmart to supply snacks and so forth.
Yeah.
And I looked at your shoe wear, and I said, Moro, did you bring any other shoes? And you said, no. I said, why don't you buy a pair of sneakers here at Walmart? And what happened, buddy?
Well, I didn't buy them. Well, I think what you want to hear is that you were right. And you were right. No excuse. Whenever you go to a Disney park, always bring the proper shoe wear. Make sure you got all the support you need, because it really puts a damper on your day. Because if you're like me and you got very high arches and lower back pain, I mean, it basically kills your day. You're trying to enjoy yourself. You're trying to not be in pain. But at the end of the day, your feet kill you so much, and it just kind of, makes the trip the time at the parks is not as enjoyable, especially if you have to sit down and rest all the time, So yes, so always bring proper footwear for sure. No flip flops, no sandals, because those don't support you for shit.
I brought a thermos with tea.
Lock and key.
This
so the no
sweet tea, but it's zero sugar sweet tea. I'm not
Oh,
sure
you
how
said
that
tea.
works.
Gotcha. Yeah.
It's just tea. I mean, I suppose I could have had any number of things in there, but just kept it clean and sober, straight edge, just tea, buddy.
Yeah, man. Well, here's another good tip. And I remember, like, if I might, turn the tables on you, I remember when you went to Magic Kingdom, you had like 8 Gatorades or so packed in your backpack, and I very quickly tried to talk you out of it, because number one, they add a ton of weight to your backpack, and it's basically not what you need to be drinking. I mean, sure enough, they can maybe quench your thirst, but they're not an energy drink, and they really have no other effect that water couldn't also do for you. So the best thing for you would have just bring a giant, maybe gallon of water. And if you still don't want to carry that, just use the water fountains around the park. I get like hygiene and all that, totally fine. But definitely definitely drink liquids like tea and water, and really don't bother with like the sodas or the Gatorades, because for like guys our age, we need to be conscious of that kind of stuff, to keep us getting through this.
Moro, I actually did 1 or 2 days when I brought 8 big 16.9 ounces of Gatorade and somehow squeezed them along with a bunch of other stuff into this backpack, and was dragging probably a 20-pound backpack around Hollywood Studios and getting exhausted because I was like carrying a 20-pound bag on my back and sometimes switching it to my hands. And you did tell me, but I didn't consult with you before. I told you after that I was feeling horrible that day, and you told me about the Gatorade thing. So I give you credit for that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, on one hand, you bring your own Lunchables, which I think is good. It's a cheap way to eat some protein, and that's actually that's an idea I might copy from you. I'm the one who usually doesn't like to bring food or carry it on me. As a kid, you would go on a long ride, and your parents would always like make you sandwiches, like wrap them up and stick fruits in your backpack. And then a couple hours later, you open your backpack and you get the smell of food in your face. And I never liked that at all. It would get all smushy. The bananas would be mashed up. The apples would have dents in it, and it just looked really unappetizing. So ever since that day, I would always buy food wherever I go. So I'm, that guy. Yeah, but food at Disney can be expensive for sure. It can also take a while to get it because you got to get in line. They have an app now, but you still have to wait for the food to be ready. Seating is a problem. Finding a place to sit down and eat your food can sometimes be hard. Sometimes you end up finding yourself just sitting on a wall somewhere, or depends on the park. But I think the worst part about food at Disneyland, and you might be surprised to hear this, is the variety isn't very good. In fact, nowadays, where everyone is so conscious about having gluten-free options and vegan options and just plain healthy options, I mean, the food at Disney can range either from being mediocre to just downright shitty, and it's not great. And it's sometimes just, it's sometimes very cheap stuff too. Like we're talking about your basic French fries and pizza, which it's a kid's park. I get it. They have to have those there. But salads were very rare for some reason. And just anything other than that, like maybe like some rice, something you'll be hard to come by.
Some kale, for crying out loud.
Yeah, some kale for sure. And you'll be surprised that a company like Disney, who puts such a focus about being inclusive, diversity and everything, and you can, not that I want to bunch everything together, but it does also extend to people with multiple diets, whether they're cultural or health-based, so you would think Disney would be on top of that, but and that's just based on what I've seen. I was actually kind of worried that I wouldn't be able to have coffee at Disney, because I'm a big coffee drinker. If I show up at a park at like 8 a.m. or 9 or something, and I don't have coffee, I don't do well. Even on a hot day, I don't care. I will drink a hot cup of coffee. So I was like really worried that they wouldn't have like for some reason a place to get coffee, because I don't remember that when I was there when I was younger, because I didn't drink coffee, or not much of it. Sure enough, though, you roll up to any park and one of the first things you see is a coffee cart. So that's helpful. So if you need your morning coffee fix, there's always going to be a place. And I'm pretty sure that every park, or at least the ones that I've been to, Magic Kingdom and Hollywood, they actually have Starbucks.
Starbucks is all over these things now, buddy.
Yeah, and some of them are just in disguise. Like, you wouldn't know it was a Starbucks. They try to like dress it up as like something completely different, like a ye old coffee shop from the old Hollywood 40s. And then you go inside and it's like, oh, it's fucking Starbucks. You know,
Sponsored by Starbucks.
that's
Hey,
right.
Can you address Adam's statement? Because maybe you haven't seen it and I didn't see it. The sodas of the world. Did you address that earlier? Because I'm not sure what Adam's talking about.
Yeah, I did address that, Adam. Thanks for the comment. If you're still watching, I don't actually remember that, if I'm being honest. Either because I didn't see it when I was at Epcot, or it's something new. So, and when I say new, I mean something added since in the 10 years that I haven't been there, or, you know. But I did actually bring up a story about the Coca-Cola drinks at Disney Hollywood at Star Wars Land, because they're shaped like a prop from the film. And any Star Wars nerd like me will look at that and be like, oh, that's so cool. So that was the only souvenir amongst all the souvenirs that were, you know, things from the movies. The one souvenir I ended up taking with me from Star Wars Land was an empty Coca-Cola bottle, because it was shaped like a prop from Star Wars, because that's really all I wanted.
This lockers thing. I'm just passing by the lockers, Morrow. Who would that be to the advantage of? Because to me, if you get a locker for the day at a park, if you want your stuff, you're going to have to go back to those lockers, and you might be halfway across the park by that point.
Yeah, that's a good point. I guess it's really meant for people and their belongings that they carry with them when they enter the park, and they don't want to carry them around, which, you're right, it makes no sense, because why don't you just leave your stuff in the car? You know, why pay for a locker if it's like right at the beginning of the park? So I don't know, but it could also be something that maybe if you're there for the long haul, and like maybe once you're halfway through your day and you want to unload and you don't want to go back to the parking lot, at the very least you have a locker to go to, which is maybe cuts down maybe half of your aggravation. But then, yeah, if you need, and then you can pick it up at the end of the day. I'm thinking maybe it's more for that.
Yeah, I guess for me, I just cram as much as I can into this backpack, and I feel good about that, because I can have my wallet in there, a pen, my phone if I need to put it in there for a while, etc.
Yeah.
So I'm a big backpack guy.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. You know, I'm like the opposite. I I like to be hands-free and not carry anything on me. You know, like I understand, it's not for everybody. Women sometimes have purses that they, or little things that they need that maybe we can live without. But but also, if you have kids, you got to carry stuff for the kids, because they might always need something. So for like a single guy like me, I don't mean single as in relationship status, I mean single going to the park, like I do sometimes. It's just easier for me to be hands-free and weight-free. So, but I understand you need, you're there for the long time, and sometimes you just need stuff on you. I get it.
Well, for me, the reason to bring the backpack is not out of any type of fashion statement, and simply because wallet, phone, glasses, hand sanitizer, masks, I mean, that's the bare minimum. Then if you're
Sure.
going to bring a thermos in, okay, where do you put this thermos? If you're going to bring some snacks in, where do you put your snacks?
Yep.
I couldn't do this without a backpack. I think I've done that. I've come here about 35 times in the last year and a half.
Yeah.
And I've done, because I have the season pass. And right. I've done one visit without a backpack just to see if I could do it. And to be honest, it was okay, but I really didn't like it, because I got those eyeglass wipes I got to have, if nothing else. And those, if you put your eyeglass wipes in your pocket and then they all fall out, then you can't see for the rest of the day.
Sure thing. Yeah. No, I need things sometimes too. I get heartburn sometimes, so, or at least like reflux. So it's good to have like Tums on you that you can pop, kind of help that a little bit, or or maybe you just, I don't know, or like anything can happen for sure. It doesn't even have to be a big thing. It could just be like a little thing that you just know is going to bug you for the rest of the day. Like say you get a little sunburned, those things can all be avoided by just carrying stuff with you. So yeah.
Suntan lotion was in the bag today. No, I put the suntan lotion on in my car before I go in, but I bring it with me too. I guess I'd rather have a few things on me and not need them than need them and not have them.
That's right.
And my other trick of the trade for those that are still with us, and remember there's people that watch on the replay too.
Okay.
I always do things. I bring an extra t-shirt and an extra pair of boxer shorts. And if I get hardcore, I might start bringing an extra pair of socks. Because to me, that comfort, it's a park. You're going to get a little sweaty. If there's a water ride in Disney, you might get a little wet. Why not have an extra t-shirt and undergarments if you need them, rather than be uncomfortable?
Yeah, very smart. That's one of the reasons why I always avoid Splash Mountain. And I don't avoid it for the reason that maybe some people might think.
Politically correct or incorrect reasons.
Yep, we might get into it some other time, or if we have time, we can here. But I just never liked flume rides. Like I like water. I like water parks just fine because I'm in my bathing suit. Clearly, I have to, like, I don't mind getting wet. In fact, you have to. And I love slides and all that, but I just really hate flume log rides. I just hate getting wet and then being wet, having wet clothes on my back for like the next, depending on how hot it is, the next couple of hours. So just not my thing. So yeah, sure enough, I might take your advice next time if I have to go on one of those rides and just.
What I've discovered with Splash Mountain is you really don't get too wet for the most part. Now, of course, watch somebody hear me say that and get on Splash Mountain and get soaked. As far as the political incorrectness, you and I went on a vision quest to find this movie, Song of the South. I found some bootleg version from Europe online that was like in 6 parts.
Yep.
I watched it. I was more, and I see why people are offended. Don't get me wrong. I was more offended that it was just a boring movie. That storyline, in my opinion, even for a G-rated Disney film or whatever it is from 60, 70 years ago, to me, it was just a boring story.
Yeah.
Now, if you get into the political, the thing that people have an issue with, and rightfully so, is basically slaves or at this point sharecroppers freed slaves, which is apparent. They don't say that, but it's apparent. Uncle Remus? Yeah. Well, he's just what the term, and it's it's not my term. It's a term that's been used. The magical Negro is the term. So it's a offensive. The actor did a great job. I think he was even nominated for an Oscar for it.
Yeah, I think I heard that too.
Yeah, he's not his fault.
No,
but it's just a situation where Uncle Remus is just happy to be there. Yeah. He's happy to be taking care of these white kids. And of course, the white kids are brats. And they look up to him as their spiritual guru. Yeah. And then something the kids do wrong gets them in trouble. And the white mom blames Uncle Remus. Is that even his name? Do we have that right?
It is. The character's name is Uncle Remus. Yes.
They blame him. The mom blames him for these stupid kids. Whatever they did wrong, I can't remember. And then he's telling the story of the Brer Rabbit and the Brer Fox, and the story of these animals in this magical animated world is like a metaphor or an analogy for what's going on this plantation.
Aha. Okay. So,
go ahead.
No, I was going to ask. I haven't actually seen the film yet. I've been meaning to get around to it. But are those analogies in any way, like, do they say anything? Like, are they overtly Are they obvious enough to know that the movie is actually trying to give a message of anti-racism amongst all the unintentional racism? Or
I didn't catch that. I
Mm.
caught that some of the animal voices were stereotypical, affected. I don't know what you'd call them, African American slave voices
Yeah,
that were common in cartoons not that long ago.
yeah,
And it's
yeah.
not just Disney. You can look at all the major studios on
Oh,
YouTube.
for
You can
sure.
find banned cartoons that were outlawed.
Mm.
There's a really bad history. There's even a bad history of cartoons, and then there was some horrible game that people played at fairs. I can't even say the name; it's so foul. But basically, they would make living black people get dunked. Like, it was pretty bad, man.
Oh,
And,
it's horrible. Yeah, like
and
a like a carnival kind of type thing. Yeah.
right.
No, and believe me, like Song of the South was not the only offender at the time. I'm sure a lot of movies, fall into that category. Yeah, a little bit of additional historical context. I think the movie must have come out in I want to say maybe the 60s or maybe 70s. It wasn't actually banned until the 80s. After backlash from the NCA, I'm sorry, NC.
And
Uh,
you NAACP.
Thank you very much. I was so afraid I was going to mess up.
National, is it Association or Allegiance of Colored People? North American Association of Colored People, something like that.
Okay. Yeah.
The
And
movie
yeah,
was actually made more like in the 40s or 50s, just to
you're right.
clarify.
Which would actually make more sense, clearly, giving that this was still years before the civil rights movement or any kind of awareness in the media, especially. The kind of films and cartoons we're talking about are pretty much centered around the 40s and 50s. So the movie ended up being banned from ever being theatrically shown in the 80s, and also from ever being released on home video, which at the time was the new thing. So there was never a home video release of Song of the South. So not on video, not DVD, not anything else. To this very day, it's
Not
not
in the USA, but other
not in the
countries.
USA, correct? But it did get a release internationally. So,
and that's where people can find bootleg copies online.
Right, and that's how the bootleg copies come about, and they're surprisingly good since they're essentially being lifted from either a videotape, well, most likely a videotape. So,
the version that I saw was not in particularly great shape. It looked like a grainy VHS that someone uploaded to like Stick Parks. And like I said, I sent it to you. I watched it just out of morbid curiosity. And I was more offended how boring the movie was. Now, here's the movie's very boring. The ride, my cure, not that they're listening to me, but my cure would be if they would simply, because the movie is not referenced in the ride, but you have the characters that are there, that I guess that's the reference. And if they were to change the voices of these animals, because you're on this ride and they still have that stereotypical slave effect to their voices.
Yeah.
If they were to simply re-record the voices, I don't think we'd have a problem.
Yeah, you're probably right. I think anyone who's not familiar with the source material, especially children, would be like, oh, look at those cute animatronic characters, in the end, though, it's essentially all, it's going to be all for naught, since Disney is already planning on rebranding the entire ride, using the animation from the movie The Princess and the Frog, which is surprisingly underrepresented at Disney World. Actually, maybe not so surprisingly, because I don't think it was a theatrical hit. It was sort of at the time the only traditionally animated hand-drawn film in a sea of 3D CGI films coming left and right at you. Disney, every other studio made one. So it was sort of like an oddity, and I think that's why it wasn't noticed. So I'm not a huge fan of the film. I found it actually a little bit boring as well. Clearly it came out when I was in my 30s, so obviously I'm not going to have the same. I was not clearly not the key demographic. But to go back to your comment, I mean, number one, good to see that movie get some representation. Two, sometimes movies, are just more interested based on their mystique, than their actual content. I'm sure there's a lot of examples of this. There's still people who pay, not to veer off topic, but there's people who pay insane amounts of money for artifacts from the past that are either really, really rare or, just plain hard to find because either they're banned or something else, only to find out that it's like the worst thing, most boring piece of media that, they've ever come across. So. But,
Right. Well, to get back to this Song of the South thing, I'll be honest, the first time I was on that ride, I really enjoyed it. And I just felt like, man, if I was to diagnose the issue here, let's just get these voices re-recorded and maybe
sure.
we can let this thing be live alone. And that Princess and the Frog movie, I can't even remember seeing it. I don't think I ever saw it, and I don't think I ever heard of it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, no, you probably wouldn't have. Kind of fell under the radar. Don't get me wrong, I'm sure it has its fans. It was kind of notable for being for having the first African American princess in the film. It takes place in New Orleans. I want to say about 40, 50 years ago. So think a lot of, New Orleans, French Quarter, jazz kind of stuff, which I think artistically and creatively is a great choice for both the film and the ride. I'm a big fan of that kind of culture. It almost seems like, but also kind of feels a little bit like overcompensation on behalf of Disney. It's like basically, by correcting our mistake from the past, we're going to be using our only African American princess to sort of make up for it. So clearly they know what they're doing or trying to do.
Well, buddy, I want to thank you for being on this spontaneous podcast. Mike leaves Epcot August 16th, 2021. Spontaneity. I wish more people were spontaneous like you, my friend, because it's spontaneity which makes things exciting, in my opinion. And I've got a low battery here, so I'm gonna call this a wrap. But if people want to see more of your acting, they can, of course, go to Mike's original films playlist, Wrestling with Sanity short film trilogy. Would still like to make that movie at some point before I'm dead. And any other projects or whatnots you want to plug or mention or anything, go ahead, buddy.
Okay. Not at this time. No. Things have kind of been kind of dead during COVID, but if anything's starting up again soon, I'll let you know.
And you can also contact Moro if you want to buy some official Mike Messier Pro Wrestling merchandise. Moro is the games master for the merch, and he's been very helpful in that regard, selling wonderful merchandise, nostalgia. And buddy, I'll call you when we get off the podcast for a private, some private notes. But I had a good day today. I went to the Three Caballeros ride twice. There was barely a line at all, like right on. And usually that has a line. And I got onto the Never thing at the end of the day. And I learned and I was there at 4:00. So this is what I did. This was the breakdown for those keeping notes. I get into the park. I go on the Future World ride in the Dome. No line, but it was very slow. The second thing I did was I did Nemo. I looked at a few things, the shark, the shark statues in the aquarium, but I didn't really look at the real live animals. Then I went to Figment the Imagination once. Then I went to the land. There was a rainstorm for a while, so I hid out. I did my 3 things in there. I did Soarin', which had a 10-minute line. Usually that's up to an hour. I did my favorite thing, which is kind of a weird favorite, but the lay of the land, or the land thing, the boat ride. Then I did the movie, the environmental movie. This is all in the land. Then I was determined to see some new stuff. So I ended up going to see the France movie, which I had seen once before, but I kind of forgot about it. So I saw the French movie. Then I asked for directions, and I had asked for directions twice. I got to the Caballeros, which is kind of hidden, and I went on that twice. And then I went to the Never thing in the half-hour line. So I did all that, and I got to the park, inside the park, at 3:45. So pretty successful as far as like being here for only, whatever, 4 or 5 hours and doing all that. And the two tips of the trade, I would say, for those looking to get your fun in a limited amount of time is bring some snacks. Don't waste time eating food in here because it's too expensive and it wastes too much time and you're still going to be hungry afterwards, in my opinion. And then the second thing is the test track hogs up a lot of time. So I skipped that. So there you go.
Good. Yeah, I got nothing to add, man. Looks like a successful day. Certainly did a lot. And, do what you can, have fun, don't overexert yourself, and make sure you wear the right shoes. So
tomorrow, for those that are just joining, check the channel because we'll be doing a replay. The replay will be, you can go back, rewind on the replay. Tomorrow I might hit you up if you're available. I'll call you after and maybe we'll do the Disney Magic Kingdom. It remains my favorite park of the four, the Magic Kingdom, old school. But I'm going to hang it up now. I'll give you a private call after. Thanks, Mauro Canepa from Boston, for his play-by-play analysis of Mike's leaving EPCOT Center August 16th, 2021. Thanks, buddy.
You got it, man. Looking forward to next time. Bye.
Thank you.